Okay, everybody, welcome to another session of Conversations with Chris. I'm so nervous because I have my friends here of the Democratic Party, and I finally was able to snag them for an interview. So this is going to be a really, really good interview, and I'm going to say up front that Marianne and Jody are good friends of mine. But, let's just start talking. So what I want to do is I want them both to introduce themselves, and then we're going to talk a little bit. Both of them grew up in this area. Both have been longtime Democrats. And it's an interesting thing to talk about how that happened in a county that is so red. So, Jody, why don't we start with you? Just a little bit about yourself growing up and how you stayed a Democrat.
Well, I'm Jody Gaulin. My maiden name was Guy, and I grew up in Seneca, class of '76 at Seneca High School. And I was very interested. I was one of those student council types in high school, leadership types. Went to Girls State and Girls Nation, American Legion sponsored programs. And that's what really got me interested in depth in politics. And I ended up majoring in political science and minoring in business administration and math at Winthrop College. Now it's Winthrop University. And I married my college sweetheart, and we lived in Seneca about a year and a half, then moved to Anderson for about 10 years, and then came back to Seneca. How I got to be a Democrat, I think I might remind everybody that everybody was a Democrat in this county for a long time. When you look back, it just wasn't cool to be a Republican. It's because of, when FDR died, when Roosevelt died in the Depression, my grandparents and my parents, their children, which my mother, lined the railroad tracks as that train went through Seneca carrying Roosevelt's body, weeping because of what Roosevelt did to get them through the Depression. And these are farmers. Both my grandparents, sets of grandparents, had little cotton farms where they leased land, or in my dad's case, they were sharecroppers. And one of the things that has always been emphasized in my family is stay engaged, stay involved. So I identified as a Democrat. And when I graduated from Winthrop, I went to work for J.P. Stevens and worked there for 28 years. And I have to confess that for a short period of time during my work in management in corporate America, I tried to be a Republican. I tried to be a Republican. It wasn't easy, okay? I considered myself a very liberal Republican.
Well, yeah, because you were probably a minority at work, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, you just hear all that kind of stuff all the time, and it's for the Republicans consider themselves better educated and, more in tune with the corporate goals and that sort of thing. But the Republican Party moved so far to the right and really made an unholy alliance with Christian conservatives.
Okay, I agree. But what year are you talking about?
I would say, this is late 80s, early 90s.
Okay, all right. So and that's a good point to make, because I want to say something about that when
because by bringing them in with the social issues, and I can remember talking to a cousin of mine who happened to be a Republican, and this would have been in the early 2000s, about this unholy alliance. And not that there's anything wrong with being an evangelical Christian. I mean, I'm a Christian. But to bait on people's fears about social issues and trade loyalty for one or two social issues to selling your whole self out economically was something that I just didn't agree with. And my cousin and I were talking, and he said, this is going to backfire one day, and it has. So that's why the Republican Party, in my opinion, is in such disarray, not just at the local level, but at the national level. But I'm here to talk about being a Democrat. So I came back to the fold, and I was not real active in the party itself until I retired, and that was in 2017.
Okay. So we'll step back and, because there are a couple things I want to talk about those years. But Marianne, now, everybody needs to know, I met Marianne first, and I met Jody through Marianne. And as if people know Marianne, she's pretty tough, which for me, it was like, I think I found my second wife. Tell it like it is, and we became good friends, and I always enjoy talking to her. When I hear her voice, it just perks up my day. So let's talk about you growing up and what made you decide to stay a Democrat or be a Democrat.
Well, I don't know if there's any one thing that made me. I tried being a Republican. I voted for Ronald Reagan, and the economy went bad, and I lost my job. But I found another job, luckily, But I don't know what made me a Democrat. I guess what brought me off the sofa was Trump. I never felt like I needed to be involved. I never felt like I needed to call my legislator or call my senator. I never felt like I needed to do anything, but I retired the week after the 2016 election. So I sat home for a year and watched TV, and then I had to get out. I think Trump and all the BS was making me sick. I mean, mentally ill, physically ill. And so I went out and knocked on the blue door at the Democrats' office, and that was in 2017, and I keep going back for more.
Okay, so my first vote was for Nixon, and I wasn't active in politics. It was like, my parents were very conservative. I didn't pay a lot of attention to it. And that was when McGovern was running, and everybody was McGovern, but I was Republican. So I graduated from college, and then I got in. I started working for GE. Everybody, there were no Democrats, okay, but I didn't really think about it. Then we got into the '80s, and then when Clinton was running, Bill Clinton, I started listening. It was one of those things where I kind of like, well, he's making a lot of sense, and I'm like, no, he's not. I got to, no. But then we got into 2000, and I voted for Bush. And both years, I did not like the second part of the Iraq War, but I started finding out the WMDs were basically, fake.
Right.
Then we got into McGovern, not McGovern, McCain. I always liked McCain. And Palin, I was kind of like, yeah, but I still voted for him. Now, my wife didn't. She changed. She didn't tell me. Okay. And then I had a buddy of mine that was a Marine. He's older than me, in 66, 68 in Nam. And I said, well, I bet you liked him. He goes, Chris, that guy was a POW, man. You think I want that guy in the White House and his hands are a little bit shaky and he gets mad? And I said, well, I never really thought about it. Obama came along and I was like, but boom. Then as soon as we got into the second term, and starting in about 2000, when we were getting into some of the social issues, I literally, working for GE, we had great benefits, but I had my boss's boss, whose wife got cancer, and at that time, you didn't have Obamacare where you didn't, you still had these limits.
Limits, yeah.
He went through it. He lost his house.
Yeah.
And that was a fear I always had when I was working, that, I'm one job away unless I can keep hustling, and it's like, well, then once we started getting Obamacare, it's like the stuff made sense. And I thought, but when he came along, when the Tea Party was here, I thought, man, and I told a buddy of mine, I said, this is going to get bad. You just watch.
Right.
Never in a million years would I thought about this. Well, then he came along, and I remember when he spoke in Greenville, and he talked about the Iraq War and the WMDs, and I thought, maybe there's something. Well, then the next day he started all the crazy stuff. He started talking Mexico and everything else, and I thought, man. And then when he was nominated, I knew at that point I was done. And then the one thing that scared me the most was when Mike Flynn
Yeah.
spoke. And I had this buddy of mine that went to the Air Force Academy, is a real Trumpster. And I said, that dude is the one you want to watch. That guy's crazy. Oh, no. So then at that point, and I personally, I just couldn't take the hate. I couldn't take the hate. And nobody would ever accuse me. I mean, I'm a capitalist. Everything I have, I work for. I mean, but when I get to the social issues, I'm not even liberal. I'm more along the lines of, hey, what are the right things to do? What's the decent thing to do? We're all equal in this world. I mean, it just, and then it got worse and worse and worse. So that was my conversion. And then January 6th had a huge impact on me emotionally, especially with my dad being in the Navy. My dad was shot down in World War II. He survived. Right after he got out of the hospital, he was back in the Pacific again. So it was a very emotional time. So, and I could be harsh at times, but for me, it's like you either believe in the law or you don't believe in the law.
Exactly.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And then it's amazing to me we can talk about the Constitution. Everybody's a scholar now. Everybody's like, well, but when he was talking about dropping the Constitution, it was, it was like no big deal. I'm like, you really understand what that means. So, anyways, let's talk about these local issues. The one thing, and because I'm not from here, I've been here 17 years. I moved 11 times in my career, and I've seen a lot of different things. But I find this fascinating. And I look at it, and very, very rarely do I meet Democrats, okay, in this county. Now I have a friend of mine that I grew up with whose family, he's an attorney. He ran for governor of the state of Indiana. He lost. But anyways, he was the only one. And he would always say, how could you vote for those guys? And I remember, when I was in college, I said, that's just the way it was. Because, I just wasn't that interested. I just did kind of like what my family did. But now, when I hear these things, and I hear it all the time, well, a Democrat will never get elected. So what do you hear that, and Jody, you run the party, and Mary Ann, you're like number two that, every time I see you, you're constantly working. What do you think? Well, I know you think that's kind of weird.
I think Democrats can be competitive in Oconee County. We have just got to find people that will run. It's time consuming. Just the running for office is time consuming.
So do you think the real, in your opinion, so you think the real issue on why a Democrat can't get elected is because people don't want to take the time, or people think, why take the time because I won't get elected?
But both.
But we've got county council districts, and we've got city councils, town councils in this county. And I can tell you right now, there are Democrats on town councils and city councils. It's nonpartisan races, and if you ask any of these people, they work together well, they concentrate on the issues. And so we know whether we've got elected Democrats in partisan seats or not, that we've got influence. I tell people at the Chamber of Commerce, because we're members of the Chamber and support them, but I tell people 35 to 40% of your customers are Democrats. And the reason you don't hear from them is because of some of the ugliness that happens, and that now it's okay to say things that a few years ago nobody would say.
No.
One of my husband's real good friends lives across the lake from us. He told him one day, said, well, and I know he knew we were Democrats, although my husband really considers himself more of an independent, but he's like, as far as I'm concerned, you can just take all the Democrats and line them up and shoot them.
Oh, God.
And I can tell you, and deep down, I don't think he really meant that, but to say something like that, it affects people's social life. So Democrats don't tend to talk about their political leanings and open themselves up to just ridiculous comments like that and worse. And I can assure you, I mean, I had to take my Biden-Harris sticker off my car because
yeah.
of 2 or 3 issues, and I stubbornly kept it on there, and I should be able to have it on there. But where guys in pickup trucks were rolling coal on me, I don't know if you know what that is, where they
smoke.
did, yeah, which is illegal in South Carolina, by the way, flipping off, and I had somebody in Anderson County pass me on the grass side of the road and shoot me a bird all the way, and I'm like, what was that? And I finally figured out it was that bumper sticker. So, you know, it's just crazy. But I'm one of these people who's not really scared of the very old devil. I'm pretty tough, but sometimes you just don't want the hassle. Now, let me talk a little bit about districts. Okay, everything, and you've heard of gerrymandering and that sort of thing, but everything is with the access to data that political parties have now, Republican and Democratic Party, then you can see which districts are the most difficult versus the easiest to win in. And this affects gerrymandering. In some districts, they can do it precision, you know, draw lines to where you just exclude, you're either packing one district with Democrats and let the rest of them be Republicans and so forth. We've got a little of that in Oconee County, in my opinion, because District 3 is Seneca and just the closest suburbs of Seneca. But then I'm in District 5, okay? It goes all the way to the Georgia line, Fairplay and all that, across to Earls Grove, across to Friendship where I live, and then to the Ravenel area across the lake from Clemson. Well, there are a good many Democrats in that area. There's a good many Democrats in Friendship, but my voting strength is stripped because of, you know, the more rural conservatives. So we know that some districts are more feasible to have a Democrat win. I think we can get a Democrat to win in 2026 in the city of in the Seneca Council District 3.
But not before.
Well, doesn't come up till then.
Right. But I mean, you're concerned about these other districts. Like take a look at Hart's district.
Well, Hart's district is probably.
And then you got Durham's district.
Yeah, Hart's district is probably not as well situated as District 3, but it's not as conservative as you think it is. And I think what you have to worry about, you know, 5 years ago, he was a lot different, in my opinion, than he is now. A lot of what I see him doing is kind of like for entertainment purposes only and contrariness. And somebody else had that role before, and he went off council. And so, you know, I just don't know why that's productive for the county. And I think it could hurt him. And get more people interested in voting. So that's for us. We've got to get the good candidates, like Mary Ann said, and quality candidates who are willing to put in the time. And we've got a lot of workers that will do the grassroots organizing, which frankly we're better at than the Republicans right now. And I'm not saying the Republicans, the Oconee County Republican Party, I think is learning their lesson as far as what you have to do to get quality candidates elected. And so recruited and elected. So it's a challenge.
I'd like to see a woman on council. Well, Democrat.
Yeah.
You know, because I truly believe I think the perspective is different. You know, I'll give you an example for me. So, and, you know, I mean, because I pay a lot of attention. I've learned a lot, you know, with especially with Jeff. I mean, you know, he's like my encyclopedia, you know, and then I'll take that and run with it, and then it makes me think a lot about it, and then I come back with an opinion, and we'll disagree on some things, but he's always very open about it, and he knows the history of what's going on. But this thing with the sanctuary for the unborn really kind of, I mean, I was reading it, and I was trying to figure out, and I said, well, you know, it has nothing to do with the law. And this is when, you know, we had Kane on there. And where I got involved with the county side was in December 21. And I remember I was reading an article in the paper. And these guys this OCC group was so degrading to these guys. I'm like, I mean, it's like, it didn't even make any sense, like the disgusting things. I mean, so that's when I started engaging with them, and I didn't know these guys. That's when I started engaging with them on Facebook. And I thought, okay, and boy, they come after me like wolves, you know, but I thought, hey, this is great, man. I'm pounding on them, and we go at it. Then I'd write my letters to the editor, and then I met Randy because he liked it. And I said, well, you know, I don't like to be bullied, and I don't like this hate crap, because it's like when you take Elliott, Davis, and Kane. I didn't always agree with them, but it's like I never they might Republicans, but you know, you never heard them throw the weird crap out. It was like, we got a county to run.
Exactly.
We got
Right.
people coming in.
But see, they went and they were trained in how to be radicals, you know.
Yeah, and that's a tactic to get at the
Right.
local
There is
level.
no doubt that there was a team of people who got trained by radical right-wing groups that took over several parties in the state. This is very strategic. I mean, when you pull out this 6-page document that's written by somebody, some lawyer or something, and try to get it passed in Oconee County, I mean, I just don't picture Oconee County people just sitting there writing all that up. You know, and so, and that night, I'll never forget, I was there and spoke against the sanctuary. And the last thing I said was, if you post those signs, then welcome to Oconee County Sanctuary for Life. You might as well also post, we cast the first stone. Because when it comes to those issues, those are very individual issues. And no matter what one's personal belief is about abortion, it's a live and let live scenario. And I'll give you an example. On the front page of the Seneca Journal, it's probably been 4 years ago now, there was a nice couple and they had a child, and they were telling their story. And the story was that I think they had adopted this child, but previously the mother had a pregnancy, and there was all these complications, and she was told, I mean, the medical experts, not lawyers, not politicians, the medical experts said that that baby was not going to live. And it was going to endanger her health too. And they advised them to terminate the pregnancy, and they did. Now, this is probably a little later term abortion than a 12-week. I can't remember how far along it was. It was for a second trimester, I think. I did not see a single letter to the editor in the Seneca Journal that said, oh, those sinners, that's awful, they killed their baby. That terminating a pregnancy is an abortion. And so that just shows you that people who are devoted to the pro-life cause, or say they are here in this county, when they read something like that, it doesn't even register. That was the right thing to do. That was the right thing to do. Now this family, she lived, and then they were able to have this other child. Well, I can see those things over and over again. Of course, in high school, I was in high school during Roe versus Wade, and I was one of the propeller head type, you know, goody two-shoes student council girl, and I was up on the issue, and we had debates in our history,
1973.
in our history class, and our teacher had us debate, and one person did the viability, which is what it's about. It's about viability, and that's the way they ruled on it. 3 months or the 12-week first 2 trimesters, or no abortion. We had debates. There wasn't any big outpouring about this in this Protestant county. Were they, Mary Ann? You didn't have anybody protesting anything. You didn't have any of that. So this is learned behavior. It's a political thing that pushed that pushed a point of view to bring in large groups of people who if you talk to them about Social Security and Medicare and those type things that are super important programs that we want to preserve in this country.
You mean those socialist programs?
Well, those kind of programs, very much, if you mess with that, these very much Democratic supported ideas, but they pulled them into the Republican Party.
Well,
I'm,
okay. So let me go back to one point. I agree with everything you said. I looked at it also like, you have people and they're coming in, and you have people that live here and they're going down the highway, and it's a sanctuary for the unborn. Now what happens is you have women who made the decision for one reason, could be health, could be, whatever. And it's like, so I would tell people, so what do you want to do? You want to sit there and you want to degrade every woman that's ever had that issue, made a personal choice, and you want to remind them and make them feel bad. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, I look at it is that, everybody is like, hey, you know what? Nobody says, hey, you know what? I'm going to get pregnant because I want to have an abortion.
No.
It's just, and I've heard people say that. And I had one guy tell me, and I'd never heard it before, and it wasn't that long ago. And he said, yeah, you're a Democrat. You guys, you like to have you want to be able to have an abortion. So when the baby's born, and if you look at the baby, you don't like the color of her hair, you can kill it. And he was serious. I'm like,
that's
are you
crazy.
When
Even Roe versus Wade didn't provide for that.
I mean, I'm just saying that's how asinine it was. And then you everybody's like, okay, so no matter what, pro-life, whatever. And it's like, okay, so you want to sit there, you don't understand the issue with the particular woman. So when she does have the baby, then you want to talk about how crappy of a mother she is because they can't afford it. Maybe she may be a single mother. So, it's really complicated. And I agree. But I looked at that and I'm like, you guys have important issues here as it relates to development, what's happening, if all this crap, and you don't have unlimited funding and you don't have unlimited time. So you choose that this is the item that you want to work.
Right, bringing federal issues
Right.
into county. See, to me, I don't think politics does not have a place in county business.
Yeah, I agree. Local.
Yes, it should, like, a councilman said on his first night that he took the oath of office to the Constitution. Well, where does that leave Oconee County? And Don Mize, he said one time, America first. Well, what about Oconee County?
Yeah.
Oconee County comes first in Oconee County business.
Right.
So
And we're wasting time on social issues
right.
that
I
all
agree.
that does is make somebody feel good. And if you want to talk about the Bible, that's no different than the Pharisee getting up there and saying, oh, I'm so glad I'm not a sinner, like this other guy that's down here on his knees praying. And so you can pick and choose which Bible verse you want to talk about, but that's the kind of stuff I want to talk about.
So
This identification with faith and family, like Jeff
I
Duncan.
agree.
I mean, that is money changers in the temple, folks. It's
Yes,
money changers
yes.
in the temple. When you are using religion to gain political power and money, because you can look at Jeff Duncan's net worth now compared to when he went into Congress, and then you're shacking up with a former lobbyist.
Really? Oh, that was the second affair he had. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
I know.
And we don't need to get into all that, but
No, but I
it
want to
really
talk.
wouldn't matter if he wants to say it's irrelevant, then don't brand yourself.
Right.
Look
because
you
I've
know his
al-
barbecues he has.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember the guy out in Arizona that had the pink tents and the one that got
Oh, yeah.
and then was pardoned and all that? Well, that's an example of one of his special guests. It was after the guy had just gotten pardoned. So, but
Yeah. But
anyways, we
anyway,
know what
that's the way you're using something that isn't related to running the country
exactly. So let's talk about this
or the
this is-
county. Let's talk about the county.
Yeah, let's talk about right now. you know, and all I've ever heard is like, well, you know, you say zoning, you'll never get elected. And I'm like, okay, so it might be a bad word. Understand what we're talking about. Like an example, you can zone something commercial. And if you do that, then what you can do is you can create a commercial corridor. You can save money when it comes to infrastructure from electrical grids, whatever. Not to mention, you have places like distribution centers. Well, if you don't do things like that, then you have distribution centers spilled over into residential areas. Now you got kids getting on school buses, you've got kids riding bikes after school, and you got these trucks coming in, okay? So we have talked about this for a while. And one of the things that I've said, and I had this I started talking about zoning and planning back in '09, and literally I had my life threat. The guy got arrested, and he got PTI and all that crap. But now, what we're seeing, and that's what I find very interesting. People now are seeing exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
This thing has flipped on its head since last November. I mean, all of a sudden, I mean, you go around this county and you see all these places popping up. And people are now chattering like, oh, you know, what I find most interesting is when you talk about zoning, they'll say, well, I'm okay with bottoms up zoning, top down. And I say, yeah, everybody's okay with bottoms up because you got to get your neighbor, and they got to be contiguous so they all agree. But what's going to happen? You never get anything because nobody agrees. So that's why. But top down zoning and planning allows you to look at a comprehensive plan, figure out what you want to do. Well, now all of a sudden, this thing is just, I mean, and I tell people, they think we're talking about development standards. Mm-hmm. I think it's too late. What do you guys think? What is the impact you're going to have now?
Well, we're way behind times on it.
Big time.
Yeah.
You know, growing up around here, you know, 123 bypass was the bypass of the business district. So now, of course, it's unplanned development, all these for the last 50 years, and it's not very attractive as a corridor coming in. And the traffic, I mean, people are complaining, conservatives and Democrats, about the terrible traffic, okay, and all of these issues, but then we're against telling people what to do with their property. So we are behind times. I don't think it's entirely too late because on residential development, and that's where I think we're seeing conservatives and more liberal people, moderates.
A lot of that land's already been bought up. It's already in the
Exactly.
LLC. And like the one thing that I think that's freaked people out more than anything else is this 130. Now, you've got a majority leader who last year went before council when he was suspended. And it's like, you know, we got the only ones that want to take our property rights are communists, socialists, and globalists. He said that. I mean, besides
Who
being
said that?
Matt Durham.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, he's getting fed that. Well, Marianne talked about the nationalization of these issues and to use those kind of terms. Be very afraid, very afraid. Socialist and communist and globalist
No,
is the last thing that we need to worry
understand.
about. But that shows his mindset.
Well, that
so
just shows-
then
I
I talked to a Republican the other day at the town hall, and we had a wonderful conversation, and it was about development.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know, the ironic thing to me is that we have a segment of our population that is absolutely against any development standards or telling people what to do with their property, but they hate lake people. They hate the development around the lakes. They want something done about the traffic and the growth. They don't want to help downtown businesses because, hey, and that most of them aren't even owned by local people. And this is straight out of their, what I used to call the manifesto, but it was before 2 years ago, before the last municipal elections, there was a paper published by the OCC that said conservatives believe and Democrats believe, and you know
that was
they
also
were
the one where they didn't
they were-
believe in equality and diversity.
they
right?
were and they were
Yeah.
condemning condemning Democrats for supporting businesses. Now, is that not upside down?
Exactly.
So, but you can't say, I want to tell somebody else what to do with their property, but don't tell me what to do with my property. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Planning, zoning, the planning process, these are tools to use.
Right.
They're tools, but you've got to be able to apply them in a thoughtful manner. I mean, we've had public hearings about our comprehensive plan, but it gets thrown on a bookshelf and never looked at. But these are tools that we can use to help some of these situations, and it's something that Democrats and Republicans should be able to work together on.
Do you know what? Do you know what United Nations Agenda 21 is? You ever hear of it? Mm-mm. Okay, I didn't either. But that comprehensive plan, when you read that comprehensive plan, what a lot of people don't realize, I mean, I started looking at it a couple weeks ago, and it didn't take me, I mean, I didn't, 250 pages, but you can skim it, you can get the points. So one of this is data. The majority of Oconee County citizens want zoning.
Right.
Want planning, affordable housing, green spaces.
Yeah.
Okay, now, you have the planning commission that's stacked, you know, with people like David Nix.
Yeah,
And
the author of the manifesto, by the way.
Yes, yes. Okay. So Nix said he didn't like the comprehensive plan because it was like the United Nations Agenda 21, which is an international. Now, let me just tell you, it's really easy. No. Do you know what United Nations Agenda 21 is? These developing countries want clean water,
Right.
clean air, and they want good land so they can produce enough food to feed their people.
Yeah.
And that is what he's against because it's the government telling him what to do. And I was, you know, of course, I'll dog him. I'll say, well, that's about the stupidest thing I ever. I mean, come on, the guy. Really? First of all, it has nothing to do with the comprehensive plan.
No, nothing.
But the point is, where I missed the boat all these years, well, this came out in 20, is that the majority of this county wants those things. Now, how do you square that with where these guys are going? Because, like, for an example, I am pro-growth. I mean, and I like, well, because my wife's happy that way. You know, I like the stores and everything. But I'm telling you what, you get into Charlotte, where I moved from, you get to Texas, where I moved from, you look at Greenville now, and you look at Woodruff Road, where they're spending over $121 million on Woodruff Road, and it's just a Band-Aid. Well, you go someplace like Austin, Texas, you will never stop developers. Now, every developer is going to make a buck. They just don't have to make as much if they're following things.
Exactly.
You can have high growth counties and cities and not totally just scorched earth. And what has happened in the last year, it's almost to a year, because it happened just at Thanksgiving as I was talking about this. We literally had coming out of the dude that runs the planning, that takes direction from the planning commission.
Yeah.
Coley or Coney?
Yeah, Coley.
He was quoted in the newspaper as they had just approved a subdivision, and this guy's a planner out of Charleston, I think, so he knows what he's doing. Now, he's hampered. We just approved a subdivision, it was in the newspaper. I don't even know if it's buildable. Think about that. I mean, how crazy. You don't even know if this stuff's buildable, and you're approving this. So what does that mean for infrastructure? Okay? So...
Well, the Strom Thurmond Institute did a study several years back that said on residential growth, to put sewer, you know, for the government to put the infrastructure in there, they will never have enough taxes to pay it back. So you got to be careful, because if some of these subdivisions go in and you got more people with children, then you're going to have to build more schools. So you got to plan for all that. And it needs to be like it is around Columbia, that Lake Carolina development. When they built that thing, it was going to have thousands of over 1,000 houses. They dedicated space for a school to be built because the growth in that area was so big. And I'm sure it's because of development standards. I'm not an expert on it, but to where the developer, has got to foot the bill for some of this so that the taxpayer doesn't get stuck with it.
And developers will pay for it.
Right.
People
because
think,
they're
well,
still
we'll
going to
never
make
get 'em.
money. They're still going to make money. But we desperately need more affordable housing in the county. We desperately, I mean,
But we spend it on Sewer South.
well, there's some high demand people down there that are wanting to have a grocery store nearby and some of these kind of things.
I know, I'm being facetious. Let me just ask one question about that. Let's talk about Sewer South. You're in Walhalla.
No, I'm in Bountyland.
Okay. So you look at Fair Play. Developers have already bought a lot of that land. The Fair Play will not exist in about 2 to 3 years. But as an example, let's talk about Sewer South real quick. I'm okay with Sewer South. They were talking about jobs and all that. Okay, that's fine. I think a lot of maybe light manufacturing. But the only thing I said is treat it like a business. If you're going to spend that kind of money, what due diligence did you do to understand if there's going to be a payback? A lot of these big infrastructure things like that, you theoretically do not get a payback because it's for the common good for the future. You have to do it. But you need to understand the risk. And then I even had the newspaper that was coming after us, government's not like business. Oh, really? So that means we're going to throw taxpayer money away because we don't have to have people accountable for taxpayer dollars. And then you had the OCC with the mouthpiece of Nick saying, it's just common sense. Now, if I manage budgets and I was accountable for these multi-million-dollar budgets and my boss was telling me, hey, Chris, you made this commitment. Hey, it's just common sense. I'd have been fired. Okay? So as a consequence, we're losing everything else. We're not doing the affordable housing. And what's happening right now, we have totally opened the door on this county. Totally. And they can do whatever they want. Whatever they want. And that's what's happening, and you're seeing it happen. But when you look at this, why, I think a lot of what you guys are doing. I'd be so disenchanted, because we know what's right. I mean, and I'm biased. I'm biased. But why there's no Democrats showing up at council meetings, raising hell? Why don't?
What should we be raising hell about?
Tax dollars? Why are you doing that when the comp plan says we should have green spaces, we should have zoning, we should have planning? Not only that, we don't even know what the hell you're doing with that money, and you just put us into debt where you're borrowing $25 million. As a consequence, I'm going to be paying $45 million back. What the hell is going on with you guys? Can't you? We're taxpayers. I'm being facetious, kind of.
Well, I attended a meeting in Fair Play 5 years ago. It's when I was running for office, and listened to a guy who's big into real estate there, and people who live there in some of the lake communities, as well as the kind of term Fair Play residents. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of support for sewer. Among the cultural community, no, because they're worried about agricultural land going. And that is right now, it is one of the more attractive gateways, corridors into our county. Okay. There's no doubt about that, because you don't have to get far on 123, quote, bypass to get into Ugly. So, I take your point. Why aren't we there?
Well,
I can't,
Let me interrupt you to add something to this. It always was the plan to go to Exit 4 for Sewer South. Exit 4 made sense that there was developable property in Exit 4. What didn't make sense is to go to Exit 2 and 1, and now you're not even going to 2. It's 1.5. But there's another reason why you needed to get it down to Exit 1, because other people stand to make money.
Well, listen, when they built the Beltline, Wells Highway,
Yep.
That was built, and nobody even drove on it the first 5 years. I could ride my 10-speed bike up and down that road and not even see a car.
Like Sheep Farm Road.
So, all of that, most development, just be realistic, it's tied into making money. So but you also have people down there that are living on the lake already, and they want convenience also, and they'll speak out about having a grocery store or whatever, and they'll speak out about getting, is it 182 that runs it?
182 the Oakway.
I mean, some of the
Road.
most terrible roads in the county that they're having to drive on to get to a town to where they can shop. Just,
But when you listen to what Jeff said,
Exit
now,
4
so
is the developable property. 2
but-
and 1 has no
Right.
developable because it's owned by the Army Corps of Engineers. That's
So-
the difference.
but think about that. That could be put on one page, and they say, hey, this is the reason why. Well, then it would shut a lot of people up. I'd say, well, you know what? I understand that makes sense. I might not agree whether we should do it, but it makes sense. It's the hiding. And I think that that's the advantage that you guys would have, is coming in there and I mean, at a local level, you have a lot to offer, I mean, it's like the difference I see in the approach and what you talk about. I think there's a lot of hard thinking, and before you come up, it's not like constant dramas. Like, oh God, I can't take it. Just here are the facts, and oh, by the way, we have pocketbooks. You think I'm going to spend that kind of money? Why don't we do something like this? We need jobs for our kids. I'm a woman. I got friends. They want better shopping, but they sure as hell don't want asphalt and cement everywhere where it's constantly, especially with the temperatures rising. Think about what that's gonna be. So the only reason is I'm making that point is I would like, but I look at the other side, and you look at the ugliness that you see from a couple of these people in there. I've wanted to go in and talk about some things. I made presentations to the planning commission a couple of times, and then all of a sudden I'm a Marxist. So it's kind of like, hey, but I would like to see something where if
well,
you
I think
could
that's
get
an
something-
area where we could improve.
It's not.
But
I'm not criticizing.
yeah, I mean,
I'm not. I'm not criticizing at all. I just
enough.
think it's good. I think there's good. When I was at the other night, when I went to that social, I saw it was different. People cared. I listened to people. They cared. That one guy, Keith. I mean, he you could see the passion for what he wanted for the community. And then I talked to your husband. They really cared.
well, that's what one
it gives
reason.
me hope.
That's one reason I decided to do what I'm doing here and meeting with you, because to a certain element of the population here in Oconee County, we are the commies, the killers, just unbelievable stuff. And I don't really worry about that, but I don't want to hassle with that every day. Okay.
No.
So, and so to do things like I'm doing now, we're just regular old people who grew up here, who care about Oconee County, and also who care about good government and the process by which you evaluate these policies, these money, these decisions on spending money, and those kind of things.
Well, you know what?
Whether
Okay, you were in corporate America.
Yeah.
I don't find very many communists in.
Well, that's what I tell people, and I've told some of the conservatives that I talk to. I'm living off my 401k and my, just like anybody else. I was in corporate America for 38 years in very responsible positions.
Mm-hmm.
I am not anti-big business. I am pro and working in factories. You got to treat people right. You got to pay
Absolutely.
well, and you got to have good benefits. And that's the kind of jobs we want for people in Oconee County, and that's important.
So-
By the way, some of the protections that workers have through the years have been put in to ensure that the bad companies do what the good companies are already doing.
Okay,
Because
so-
if the good companies have to follow, if it's voluntary for them to follow EPA protections, bad companies won't follow those protections. So that's why government has to get involved, in my opinion, and in the opinion of Democrats.
Right.
So these general statements, I heard our congressman say one time, I really want to get rid of these regulations that are bothering business, business and industry. Some platitude. And I'm sitting here going, okay, when you go out there in this factory and you put on your personal protective equipment, because if you don't, you
Like
could get
OSHA,
some,
yeah.
you could get some contamination in your bloodstream, and we have regulations on what goes out the stacks. So we've got filter bags. I mean, that's just baloney. What of these protections, I call them protections, do you want to get rid of?
You mean, right. because
Burdensome protections. And
no
this is what we're
You
seeing.
want dirty water? You want dirty air? I mean, come on,
have we
guys.
forgotten? And you mentioned Nixon. He's running against McGovern. I got a funny family story on that, because my grandfather, who was born in 1882, had never voted for a Republican. And my mother talked him into voting for Nixon because McGovern was too liberal. And he never let her live it down, because you know what happened. So it's funny. And now I don't even think a person like Richard Nixon or Ronald Reagan could get elected in the political environment we have now in this country, and where you can have people outmaneuver you even on the county level and end up with a majority on a 5-member county council. And when probably maybe 10% of the public believes what they believe, like, we're not worried about patching your roads. We're worried about, sanctuary for life or the Second Amendment stuff. Let the federal people worry about all that.
Well, yeah, but quit
And-
throwing red meat on, because at the end
Yeah,
of
it's
the day,
red meat. That's exactly it. And then meanwhile, you aren't doing your due diligence on spending all this money.
well, you know what? Well, wait a minute. So let's talk about roads for a second. What you'll hear is like, the first thing they'll say when they're trying to defend against, if they're on council, well, how do you know that's not a state road? I don't think it's a state road. No, it's probably no, it's not a state road.
I respect what Spartanburg's doing.
What's
Mm-hmm.
that?
They're implementing a 1-cent tax, and they don't care if it's state or county. We're gonna fix the roads, and I think that's what needs to happen.
York County did that a number of years ago, and it's a temporary tax until specific projects are finished. And then it is not renewed unless the voters renew it again. And what these counties that do that have found is that when people know exactly where that money is going and they see the results of that money, then they'll support a tax increase.
Right.
And that will die on the vine when there's no more projects and it's not renewed.
But I think you both agree, because you've been around long enough here, roads are really a hot button. I mean, around here.
Yeah, and the
they
excuse
are.
is, Chris, you hit on it. It is very complicated to find which roads are going to be next on the list for being repaved. And they're charged. You can go on the county website and you can figure some of this stuff out. But even then, it's still kind of vague. You'll see that they're scheduled, but you don't know exactly when.
Right.
And the different and we've got subdivisions in this county. Back when the legislative delegation ran the county, it's before home rule. First election I ever voted in, was for the sewer system when I turned 18, and home rule. And home rule passed, and it said, no, we're going to have a county council that's not just a little figurehead, but you're going to choose a county government and let them run the county. But before that happened, the legislative delegation decided it. You go to some of these older subdivisions, Bayshore, I was riding in one just a while ago. They've got white stripes on the side of the road, yellow stripes in the middle. Those are state roads. And Thomas Heights is that way. So then you got to depend on the state to repair those roads, where our county has kind of kept up with a 30-year, I think it's a 25-year cycle on repaving roads, on the county roads. So, and the state wants to give these type state roads to the counties, but the counties are saying no, and wisely so. And the reason they're saying no is because when the state says we'll give them to you, and then we will allot money, state tax money, back to your county to pay for the maintenance of them. But they said that about schools. I mean, it's in the Constitution and on full formula funding, but they pass some little bill every year that says, no, we're not going to do full formula funding for the schools because we're going through hard times. It's 2008. And then you never go back to do it when you're flush with money. And so the schools are underfunded across the county and across the state. And I know we say, oh, look at these beautiful buildings. Oconee does have a stronger school system, particularly with physical plant, than other school systems. But that's the lifeblood. And you want your good students who graduate from those schools to have a career path where they can come back and live at home. I'm not talking about with mom and daddy, but live where they grew up. You know,
you gotta, they will come back and let, hey.
I mean, you know, so, and you know, John Elliott said something about this, and he understands this in the town hall the other night. He's exactly right. But anyway.
Well, wait a minute. So I understand what you're saying, but the reason I brought that up is, so let's talk about county roads for a second. Mm-hmm. So county roads are a big deal for everybody. We all know that, right? Well, you know, there is a Road and Bridges Commission.
Right.
Okay. You know who's the chairman of that?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know how many
Van
meetings?
Hart.
Yeah. You know how
None.
many meetings they have?
And that's the kind of thing when somebody runs against him,
Yeah.
they need to be hammering that home.
Yeah, 'cause
roads are a number one priority in this county, and he has not had a meeting in 2 years?
Exactly. So everybody needs to understand it's really his fault that we have bad county roads. Okay.
Well, who gives the roads department direction? Would that be?
He does.
And there is a committee that does the state funding.
The point is,
right.
The point is that those things are important to voters, and if they're important to voters, then people ought to be addressing things that they think is important. That's my
Well,
point.
exactly. And this goes back to what I said a while ago. This serving on county council is not for entertainment purposes only.
not
It's
at
not
all.
to show out and say stuff and be contrary. Probably more than 50% of District 5 is in Seneca school attendance areas. But yet, a lot of times the paper says he's got the fair play area, and I talked to them about that, and they've changed it. But listen to what was said in county council about the ARPA money being distributed to the municipalities, and he was against Seneca getting the money that was their share of the money. And you're sitting here going, this is the people you represent. But just being contrary for the sake of
But
contrariness.
you know why that he was against it. There's an issue
No,
between
no.
him and the city of Seneca.
Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, I know.
Who's he?
But you know what, Jeff? I grew up in this county,
The one that's head of Road and Bridges.
Yeah.
and Mary Ann's from Walhalla. But
And
one
I
of
grew up
the,
in Seneca.
and I grew up in Seneca, but one of the things, there's this thing, I call it Seneca envy.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I mean, I've coined this term way before all this stuff that we've been talking about happened. There's this perception somehow in the county, and when I was growing up, we had a 3A high school and the other two were 2A high schools.
Right.
And that Seneca gets everything. Well, the business is located in Seneca, you know, because Belt was in Seneca. All this was downtown back then. And then when it moved out to Oconee Square or whatever it's called, you know, Applewood. You know, it's still a Seneca address, but it's fairly central. You know, you can get there from Westminster as quick as you can get there from my house in in Friendship. So the government doesn't decide where to put those buildings, and you know, they use data. Where am I going to get the most traffic? You know, so that's just the way it is. And but there's this thing, like if you want to get something accomplished in this county, let's say libraries or something, you've got to give something to every area. Everybody's got to get something. Seneca's Ginlett Field, this is getting into my grievances. We played football on Gillette Field for years after brand new stadiums were built in the other two major high schools.
That's correct.
And that's the truth.
Yep.
And such is life. My Uncle Jerry was best blocker in, I think, 48. And he's still alive. But, you know.
And Jody, you're right. Let me get over the mic real quick. You're right. That's not the only thing that I can remember. We had an issue when they built the new high school on Wells Highway. We couldn't get an auditorium.
That's right.
Everybody else got an auditorium except Seneca. Seneca didn't have an auditorium. We didn't have a football field. You're right. There is that. You grew up here. You know it, and I know it.
But I mean, every town and every school attendance area deserves to be heard in their needs, but don't be making up. I mean, these are just regular citizens saying this. I mean, it's like, why? And then, okay, we are going to build an auditorium in Seneca, but it will not fit the whole student body, you know?
So, how are we doing on time? Okay, so we're gonna wrap this up, but I wanna end it with a couple things. I want you guys to, a couple of things that you would like to say, but I wanna talk about one thing that hit the paper today. So you see, during the Clarity's running in 24. Okay.
Oh, no, I haven't looked at the paper today.
Yeah. But I listened to all this, and we listened to what's happening in the council meetings. We see what's happening with the development here, and you watch this stuff that's going to take place in Fair Play, and you're going to see these other things. I don't think it's going to be easy as you think. So I think there's a great opportunity if you can get a candidate that can get teed up for Hart, you know, or Durham. I think you got a shot.
Yeah, well,
you know, I really
we're working
do.
on it.
Good.
And by the way, you don't just go out there and just grab somebody and they'll consent to it. You've got to have people step up, and then you have to have volunteers to help them.
It's easy for me to say in front of a microphone because that's what I really want to see. I don't have to do anything. I just have to cheer it on. So I understand that.
Well, we need that because somebody's got to be making phone calls and knocking on doors when a candidate comes. So there isn't just talk. You've got to do the grassroots work to make it happen. And so, you know.
So let's talk, because we're going to wrap this up. I want to do one of the things. And I will tell you, I've never seen anybody work as hard as this woman does. You know, and she knows I admire that. And when
I don't
read
do
this,
as much as you think I do.
oh yeah, you do. I see it. I went in there, and when the first time I went in there to meet her, and you know, he was about kicking me out. I was like, hey, I gotta get this done. I'm like, yeah, okay, I guess, you know. But anyway, I want to end it with: is there something you want to get into this interview something that matters that you want to be heard on this? Because a lot of people are going to watch this.
I want everybody to get out and vote. That is very important, especially in the Walhalla City Council race and the mayor race.
Oh God, we could go on about that.
yeah.
With that group of, what is it? Group of 15 in that family, they didn't even show up, right? You know that, right?
Yeah.
They were not going to go to was it last night they had the forum?
The forum.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was last night.
Isn't that weird?
Well, and you know, this is another example of religion in politics. Once again, I'm a Christian. But when you say God has led me to the moment that 3 of my children, I'm already on council, no politician has a monopoly on God. I'm tired as a Democrat of not being considered patriotic enough
Yeah.
Yes,
or Christian enough.
Christian enough.
Yeah.
And being accused
That'll
of
buy
that.
you
And
a
that's
lot.
not right.
Until the roads are, I won't
And
say the
then,
word.
yeah, you drive, and maintenance, you know, in the town hall the other day, when you build something, you've got to maintain it. And this is where I come from working in industry.
Yeah.
If we approve capital money for sewer or for roads or for anything, that's got to be rolled into a budget. If you add a department, you got to pay the salaries of those people from then on. Okay?
Not just half paid.
When you give 2 or 3% raises annually to your employees and you never move the salary grades, I mean, that's not running it like a business. And by the way, there's not a profit motive, and you know, and we're counting on growth to increase revenue. Mm-hmm. We've got all these people moving down here, there's 50,000.
Oh, you mean
What is it?
not up here or from over there, it's down here?
Well,
Right.
that sounds bad, I know.
No, it doesn't.
But why
I'm
do
down.
people
My wife's from Greenville. Though.
why do
That's
people
halfway.
relocate to
Yeah,
South Carolina?
I know.
Low taxes,
I-
low cost of living, relatively, although housing prices are going up.
That never entered my decision. A lot
And
of it had to do
beautiful.
with their family. Yes.
It's beautiful
Beautiful.
around here.
Geography.
It's
and
beautiful.
I love Southern accents. It's weird, but
Well,
that-
you got two good ones right here.
Yeah.
But it's
My
beautiful.
wife's is every bit as
But here again, you've got, once you're here, you've got to be willing to have good government in the county, and that affects your schools, your roads, and everything. And everybody ought to be pulling together on that.
You're right.
And
I want to. Okay, so before I end it, I do want to say one thing because I'm going to tell you a funny story because you're right about the maintenance. But when I was running a call center, one of the problems we had an outage and it was horrible. But it was good for me because I finally was able to get a generator, an industrial generator for a 5-story building. It was like $800,000. I could never get the money. Well, my boss caught so much hell, I was able to get it. So we got it. I was so proud. I took pictures of it. I was like, I got the best generator. Blah. So, anyways, I moved on to a different job and had my office there. So this guy took the job. And then what GE always did when times got tough, man, you cut everything. Okay. So we had a snowstorm, and the guy that took my job was out of town, so my boss said, hey, listen, I need you to cover it. I said, all right. So I got into a meeting, and I had like the staff that I used to have, and I said, all right, guys, let's go down through the list. I said, at least we got the generator, because I know we got gas. And I was just joking, like, and then I looked up, and they were looking at me like this, and I said, oh, are you kidding me?
the tank's empty.
They cut. We had a truck that would come once a month. There was a deal. They kept it topped off. Blah blah. They cut that 6 months ago. They didn't have gas. I had 2 hours till the storm was. We finally got it. But that's an example where, hey, this is great. And then people make stupid decisions, just like the rock quarry when they weren't doing the maintenance. And
Yeah. Yeah.
you can fix stuff early. But boy, once it gets big, that's a very expensive.
Preventive maintenance, and I've put in many a preventive maintenance program and have PM auditors going auditing behind
Exactly.
the
So you
PM
understand
people.
that.
I know all about that.
Okay,
and
so-
once again, I'm a little tired of being considered a communist. We do not have.
Well, that's because
They don't
it's
even know
better
what
to be
to-
called a Marxist. That's better.
No.
Marxist, and then I look at it, that's a communist. Okay. So, but rather be,
Well, they don't own
rather
the
be
means of
dead than
production.
red, right? Yeah,
They
there
don't
you go.
know.
Oh, wait a minute.
I'm not advocating owning the means of production.
Yeah.
But I'm not advocating getting rid of Granny's or mine. I'm 65 now. Social Security.
Well, okay, so we'll end that, but here's the funny thing. So I had people in my neighborhood that were right up on Bonnieland, and they were going ahead and trying to cut Obamacare and other things because it was a socialist program.
Yeah.
And then I said, so what do you think Social Security and Medicare? Oh, no, that's not. I said, it's a government program. What do you expect? We all
Yeah.
like it. Well, I wouldn't give it up, but that's not socialism. I said, yeah, depends on what you think.
Exactly.
So anyways, as we wrap this up, I do want to say, this is great. I've been, and you guys know, I've been chasing you guys around the county. You had to go somewhere, and oh, Marianne, I'm so busy, I can't lie. And I said, come on, Marianne, all right. So then I got you cornered. Then she tells me what sounded like we're having a Halloween party. So I come up there, and everybody's sitting around, and I thought, oh, you didn't tell me it was going to be like this. But it was good because I finally got on your schedule. So thank you guys for coming. I want people to really listen when this interview goes live because it shows that you guys really care. We don't need labels. You either love our country or you don't love our country. You either love your neighbor, you don't love your neighbors, and you either care about everybody or you don't. It's really that simple.
Right, exactly.
So I want to thank everybody for watching this. It'll be in the evening, and we got another one coming up shortly. It'll be a surprise, but this was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.